Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, I'm thrilled to be here with both Mrs. Christies. That's really great. I'm glad to be here and glad to be back here for Rick. This is a really important election. Really important election for our country, for this state, and for our party. Because here in Montana, you understand that our conservative values are the things that are going to be able to put America back on the right track. And we know that we've been drastically off on the wrong track for a number of years now. And Rick's now stepped up to the plate and is willing to offer himself again for public service. And let me start off with saying that that's not an easy thing to do. And if all of you have watched this campaign, you realize it's not an easy thing to do. You're going to have your people out there picking people apart and saying all the nasty things they can find to say about them. But all those nasty things don't say a word about your future. They don't have a word of meaning for what kind of state this is going to be for your children or for your grandchildren. And the thing I like about Rick's campaign is that's what he's talking about. He's talking about what needs to be done. What needs to be done to make sure that Montana is going to remain a place where families can stay and live and work. And those are the really important issues that confront Montana and our country right now. And so we need to start off with saying, with 4 weeks or so to go here in this campaign, we cannot reward those folks without a vision for tomorrow. You know, elections should never be about yesterday. They should always be about tomorrow. Because the mistakes we've made sure, we got to go fix them. And you could talk a little bit about that, but if you spend all your time dwelling on the past, if you spend all your time being negative, well, you're not going to inspire anybody. And I think what we need in public life now more than any other time in my life is to feel inspired again, but not inspired by words. Not just words. Now, words are important. And, it's funny to hear a politician say, don't be inspired by words, because it's about all we got, But it's more than that. You have to be inspired by deeds. And haven't we learned that lesson hard in the last 4 years? All right? Words are a great thing. And when said by somebody who has a smooth delivery and an able teleprompter, they're a wonderful thing. But you realize that in the last 4 years, what's affected Montana has been leadership that's been more words than deeds. And what's affected America has been leadership that's been all words and no deeds. And so we need to bring a whole new team to leadership in this country. And, in a place like Montana, we can't any longer reward those folks who are going to be all about talking and not about doing. Now, listen, New Jersey and Montana probably couldn't be any two different states if they wanted to be. You could eat us for an hors d'oeuvre from a physical perspective. We're called the Garden State, but I suspect that there's a lot more garden out here than there is in the Garden State. There's the traditions of our two states, which also are quite different. But I tell you, one of the things that now that I've been out here a few times and gotten to speak to a lot of folks, I've noticed are nearly the same. People in Montana, people in New Jersey don't put up with BS. They have a low BS tolerance, In Montana, you expect a man or a woman to stand behind their word, to be men and women of honor, to mean what they say and say what they mean, and then actually do the job. And that's not something in Montana, it seems to me, from the folks I've met, you get extra credit for. Seems to me that's what's expected. Well, I can tell you in New Jersey it's the same thing. In New Jersey, I grew up at a time and with a mother who definitely didn't think you get extra credit for telling the truth. In fact, there were significant penalties for the opposite. I talked about her, for those of you who may have watched the convention. I had an opportunity to talk about her a good amount in the first third of my speech in the convention, and the reason that I did is because I think it gives such a window into who I am and what kind of leader I aspire every day to be, because I learned those lessons from my mother. My dad's a great guy, still alive, 79 years old. He's an outgoing, gregarious, lovable Irishman. For the media that's here, he talks too much to the press, but other than that, he's a great guy. And I love my dad, and he had and has a huge influence on my life. But as I said at the convention, in our house, if you were going to characterize our house as an automobile, in the automobile of life, my dad was the passenger. My mother was the driver. My mother drove where we went, what the rules were, how the rules were enforced, when they were enforced, and how strictly they were enforced. And she decided. She was judge, jury, and executioner. And she loved that last part more than anything else. And she gave us a lot of lessons growing up. And I think lessons that apply so much now to leadership in our country. And she didn't intend these to be lessons in leadership. She just thought this was about being a decent human being. But I've seen that they turn out to be lessons in leadership. My mom told me a long time ago that if you get to choose between respect and love, take respect. Actually, it's because love without respect is fleeting. It's always fleeting. She said, but respect can turn into real love, lasting love. So always pick respect. Now, again, as I told you, she wasn't talking about politics. She was talking about women. And that was her advice to me when I started dating. But I know that if she were around today, she would know it applies to this. And when you look at this race, look at the person who's striving for your respect, and look for the person who's just trying to distract you. Make him just love you, love him for a minute. Now, Rick Hill has a career that merits respect. He has walked the walk. And so, while I know Rick is happy to accept your love, he needs your respect, and he's earned it. And that's the kind of people that you want in public office. People who understand that day-to-day popularity is fleeting. That what really matters is, over the long course of someone's career, have they earned your respect in public office? They can fool you for some months or some years, making you love them with a great smile and a smooth bit of talking. But eventually that comes home to roost. You don't want to turn Montana at this critical time in your state's history and our country's history over to that kind of leader. You need to turn it over to someone who's going to get the job done. This election is about who is most competent to execute on the conservative values that the people of Montana hold. And I'll tell you, from watching this race from afar, there's no doubt in my mind that Rick Hill is the guy who is the most competent to put our values into play and to move Montana back in the direction of greatness again. And maybe at times, and I say this with all due respect to the former Mrs. Christie, maybe he's not the most charming guy all the time. Maybe he's not the guy with the quickest joke in the world. Maybe he's not. But let me ask you a question. Are we hiring like the comedian in chief here? And I think we saw Wednesday night, didn't we? I think we saw on Wednesday night, you got to choose between smart and competent or smooth and smiling. Smart and competent kicked smooth and smiling all over the stage on Wednesday night, didn't they? Mitt Romney showed on Wednesday night that was the big example of this race. And when I was watching on Wednesday night, then thinking on Thursday as I was getting on the plane to come out west, and I was thinking about the different races I'm coming to visit and help people, I thought to myself, you know, the guy who reminds me the most of that contrast of these races I'm going to is Rick Hill. Because he's not the flashiest politician in the world. Never has been. But we don't really care about that today, do we? What we care about is who's the guy who's going to get in there, roll his sleeves up, get his hands dirty, and get the job done. And that's going to be Rick Hill. Same way Mitt Romney will never read a teleprompter as good as Barack Obama. He never will. And your heart won't sing when Mitt Romney talks about hope and change. And Mitt Romney won't lower the levels of the ocean, and he won't cool the temperature of the earth. But what he will do is get people back to work in America. What he will do is restore people's respect for America around the world. What he will do is make us safe again from enemies like Iran and others. You saw Mitt Romney on stage Wednesday night do exactly what you'd want a president to do. And when you've watched Rick Hill in these debates here in Montana, in my humble opinion, you've seen exactly what you want a governor to do as well. And we need to reward him on November 6th with your vote and your support, because he's earned it. He's earned it. And see, the great thing about it is, when you do this on November 6th, when you elect Rick Hill, the fun's only just begun. You know, it'll be a great night on election night. I know you'll be somewhere here in Montana. I don't know where you're going to be on election night, but wherever you're going to be, there'll be a great room, and there'll be lots of excited people, and there'll be big American flags and balloons, and everybody will be ready to celebrate, and you will. I'm confident that if we do what we need to do, you'll be there to celebrate that night. But the great news is that I can tell you from someone who's experienced it, you think that's the best night. And when you're going through it, you think it's the best night. I mean, I remember back in November 2009, outspent 3-1 by a Democratic incumbent in a state that has 700,000 more Democrats than Republicans, or hasn't elected a Republican to the U.S. Senate in 40 years. 40 years. 1972. Okay, so a pretty blue state. And I remember standing there watching the returns come in, and we were winning all night. And I didn't believe it. I'm watching the votes come in, and I was convinced they were going to steal it from me somehow. And this is New Jersey, you know, so. And finally, at about 9:15, about an hour and a quarter after the polls closed, my cell phone rang. And it was the mayor of a heavily Democratic town in our state. And he's an old friend. So he called me and said, "We just got done counting the votes here." And I said, "Really? What happened?" And he said, "You won Woodbridge." Now, I don't know what the equivalent town, if there is one in Montana, to Woodbridge. But Woodbridge, to give you some idea, you may remember one of my predecessors, Jim McGreevey, the guy who, yeah, I know, look at the horror on her face back there. He was the governor of New Jersey who served for about 2.5 years and then resigned pretty spectacularly in a national press conference where he said that his truth was that he was a gay American. You remember that guy, right? This was Jim McGreevey's hometown. This is where Jim McGreevey served as mayor for 2 terms. So when he told me I won Woodbridge, I hung up the phone, and I was in a suite full of people, former Governor Whitman, former Governor Kane, friends and family. And I spotted Mary Pat across the room. And I gave her one of these. "Oh, come here." And I took her into the bedroom. I closed the door, and I said, "You won't believe this, I won Woodbridge." I said, "Oh, that's good." We're like, "No." Yeah. I kind of took her by both hands. And I said to her, "If I won Woodbridge, I'm going to be governor." And you know, you don't know at that moment what kind of reaction is the best reaction from your wife. I can guarantee you that the reaction I got by anyone's evaluation would be in the bottom 5. I looked at her, I want to remind you again, I want to get you back to the moment. I grabbed her by both hands and I said, Mary Pat, if I won Woodbridge, I'm going to be governor. And she looked at me, she said, oh my God, you're kidding me. So Mrs. Hill, I would take that as a cautionary tale. I don't know what your line's going to be when Rick grabs your hands and tells him, I'm going to be governor of Montana. Try not to go with, oh my God, you're kidding me. Because it made me at that moment begin to think to myself, did she vote for me? And I let her go in the voting booth by herself. But then I remember, wait a second, the two little kids went in there with her. Patrick and Bridget, who were 10 and 7 at the time. Like, I'm checking up with them, see if mom actually, did mom vote for dad? I said, no, honey, I'm not kidding you. And you think that moment, and extended it to, so we went to get changed, to go downstairs to do our speech. And we went into the bathroom. We had one of those moments that couples have. And I'm sure many in this room have had this moment in different situations. She was in front of the mirror in the bathroom in this hotel room fixing her makeup, and I was putting on a new tie, and we caught each other's eye in the mirror, and we just burst out laughing. And she said, what are you laughing about? I said, the same thing you are. This is ridiculous. I cannot believe this is happening. You think that's the best moment, and it's a great moment, but it's not. It's not the best moment. And that's what I'm here to encourage you all to be a part of over the next 4 weeks and beyond. You see, for Rick to win this race, he's going to need your help. See, over the next 4 weeks, believe me, as you know, in Montana, there are going to be plenty of TV ads. You see plenty of TV ads in this governor's race and in this Senate race. You probably see enough TV ads to last you for the next 4 years. There'll be plenty of TV ads, and there'll be mail in the mailbox, and there'll be automated telephone calls to your house, and there'll be all those kind of things. Yeah, I know you don't like those. All right, Rick, no automated telephone call from me, all right? The lady here doesn't like that, so at least get her off the list, one or the other. There'll be all those things. But let me tell you still what the most powerful thing is in American politics. More powerful than any of the things I just mentioned. It's you. It's you picking up the phone and going through your phone book and calling your friends and your relatives and your neighbors and your business colleagues and associates and saying to them, hey, listen, I've met Rick Hill. I know him. I've looked him in the eye. I've taken the measure of his character. And not only am I voting for him, but I'm spending my time right now working for him and asking you to vote for him too. See, because so many of your neighbors and friends and other folks in your life, they want to be responsible citizens, but they're real busy. And maybe they're not as interested in this, or maybe they have other interests outside of politics that takes any of their spare time. But they know they want to be good citizens, and they want to vote the right way. And they know you're involved in all this. They respect you, and they respect your opinion. And you have an incredible power at your disposal. You may not look at it that way, but it is true. And so I want all of you, when we leave here today, to look at what your calendar looks like for the next 4 weeks. And say to yourself, how much time over the next 4 weeks can I dedicate to Rick and John? How much can I dedicate to the two of them over the next 4 weeks? See, maybe you can do 2 hours a week for the next 4 weeks. Being on the phones, talking to people. And sometimes you can count this time not just sitting on the phone, but maybe it's at the football field on Friday night, or the soccer field on Saturday afternoon, or maybe it's in the church parking lot on Sunday. Maybe it's at the supermarket checkout line on Monday afternoon. Every place you meet people that you know. Just turn to them and say, Rick Hill, he's running for governor, I know him. You should vote for him. He's a good guy, and he'll be a really good governor. That's incredibly powerful. And if you do that, you've now become part of this movement to change government in Montana. You become part of a movement to change the history of your state. Because believe me, the history of your state will be much different if Rick wins versus his opponent. And so that great moment's not going to come for all of you on election night. It'll be a good moment. But if you're really a part of this movement to change history, the great moment will come in January at the state capitol, when you watch a good, decent, hardworking, citizen of Montana, put his hand on the Bible and raise his right hand to swear the oath of office and to begin to change history. The reason I know it is because I've lived it. And when I stood up on that stage in New Jersey in January of 2010, and I put my hand on that Bible and I looked out at that audience, it was people just like you who had worked so hard for me, who had committed so much of themselves, their lives, their money, their time to me. And I will tell you what I saw back from them. Just the most incredible looks of excitement and the most incredible looks of achievement. That's the moment that I want you to keep in mind for the next 4 weeks. Because election nights come and go. And the balloons and the booze and the fun, they wear off the next day. What's lasting is what we do with the public office that the public grants us. And that all begins in January at the state capitol. And if you all can become a part of this movement over the next 4 weeks, you can make that day possible for Rick and his family. And if you make that day possible for Rick and his family, you know he's not going to disappoint you. He's not going to let you down. He never has in public life, and he won't start now. But even more important than that, you're going to be part of this movement. You're going to be able to sit there and watch it happen and know that you're a part of it. Not just as a citizen of this state, but as a part of this movement to change history in this state. That's powerful. That's emotional. That's big. And I don't know any American who's a good American who don't want to be part of something like that. You're already 3/4 of the way there by being here today in the last 4 weeks. And for the donations you've made today, we thank you. And Rick will be a good and honest and effective steward of that money. Make sure he uses it to effectively communicate his message across Montana. But he needs more than that from all of you. And he's such a good guy, he's not going to come up here and tell you he needs more than that. He just wants to say thank you for what you've already given. So he brings me in here to be the heavy. And say, hey, he needs you. He needs you. So listen, that's where I want to be. I'd love to be here in January. Nice cold January Montana day. Right? Out at the state capitol, watching Rick and John take the oath of office. And I want to be here because I want to be a part of this team too. And hell, I think if you're from New Jersey and you've made 2 trips to Montana, you're on the team, man. That's it. I think you're on, right? So I'll be part of the team because I want to have that same experience with you, but more importantly, I want to watch you have the experience because it's really invigorating and uplifting as an American and as a public office holder. And I got to be honest, I want to come out here too because I want to take credit. You know, I mean, who wouldn't want to take credit for something like that, right? So I don't want to come out here and be completely, Pollyanna with you. I'm going to walk around and go, yeah, I helped. That's right. I came out here and helped get Hill over the top. That's right. We're all going to have a good time that day. All going to have a good time that day, and we're going to have an even better time watching this man run your state and bring it back to the greatness and glory that it once had and can have again. Not just for us, because for those of you who are my age around here, or older, you've already had a great Montana life. What I know you're thinking about is, what about your kids? And what about your grandkids? See, because the power of government when it works the right way is it keeps families together. See, because if your kids and grandkids can't get a job here, it's going to pay them well, if they can't afford to buy a home here, they're going to leave here and go where they can. And that rips Montana families apart. And then all of a sudden, for those Little League games or those soccer tournaments, for those Christmas concerts or those spring plays, or for those little birthday parties around the kitchen table, you have to get an airplane to go and see your kids or grandkids for those. We don't want to become airplane grandparents in Montana. And if we don't turn it around, that's what's going to happen. And so this is about keeping strong the fabric of families in Montana. That's what leadership of a good government can do. It could set up the circumstances where your families can remain strong and prosperous and in Montana, where you want to be. So the stakes are really high in this election, and that's why I'm here. And the second reason I'm here is because you have a really good man who can make all these things happen for you if you give him the chance. And so, if you're ready to fight the next 4 weeks, I'm ready to fight with you. Believe me, we'll be here. We'll be here. The Republican Governors Association has been here, and we'll be here. We'll be here to stand by his side and fight with him like you are. And I can say that all my colleagues around the country are watching this race. We have 29 Republican governors right now across this country out of 50. That's pretty good. And I'll tell you what, I'd like Hill to be number 30. That would be really good for him to have the number 30 spot amongst us. And I'd love to have him do that, so we're going to work hard together. So if you're ready to fight, let's fight together. And if you're ready to make things happen through your effort, then let's do it. Because the difference that can be made for the future of Montana can't be quantified. So for each and every one of you, I can't thank you enough for your really warm welcome here. And those of you I met in the photo line, wonderful people, warm and really, really nice. Not that I expected anything different, but it's always great when you welcome somebody from back east with that kind of Montana warmth. And I will be here, I hope, in January to celebrate that moment with all of you. And if we get the chance to do that, then we'll know we did something great for our children and grandchildren. And there is no greater obligation, I'd suggest to you, that we have as Americans than to leave this place better for our children and grandchildren than it was left for us. So let's do it, everybody. Thank you all very much.